Mattias Iweborg, han er administrerende direktør i og skaber af Stockholm virksomheden Enact, hvor en halv snes specialister arbejder med en meget bred fortolkning af begrebet bæredygtighed. Både når man taler traditionelt miljømæssigt, altså hvordan holder tingene i forhold til naturen, men også når man taler om menneskerettigheder, arbejdsforhold og mangfoldighed i det hele taget. Mattias vil tale om, hvordan man på en bæredygtig måde arbejder i partnerskaber og med stakeholders, og hvordan det kan skabe vækst, når virksomheder arbejder med profilering og branding ud fra en, helhedsorienteret tilgang til bæredygtighed. Og en helt anderledes vinkel på Mattias har jeg læst mig til. Han var i sin tid initiativtager til Unge mod racisme i Sverige, så sådan et menneske er han også. Velkommen til Mattias.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm terribly sorry about speaking in English. I mean, I'm brought up in Sweden, and I always wanted to see myself as a person who understands Danish and even can say a few words in Danish. And then when talking to Sign over the phone, she said, maybe you should stick to English. So anyway, we are going, I'm just very quickly, these are some of the companies and organizations that I, throughout the years, have had the chance to work with, and I should like to say learn from. In some cases, I feel that I learn more than the clients I work for. I've been in the sustainability business for the past 12 years, and before that, I was sort of one of those dreadful management consultants who didn't care. We are going to talk about sustainable partnerships. And I put tourism a little bit there because I would still say I treat myself as in the learning mode in terms of tourism. Most of my experience is from outside, but at the same time, I believe in cross-fertilization. And I believe in taking experiences from other industries and blend them into what you are doing. And sometimes I think that is a way to find new ideas. Now, sustainable partnerships. I mean, the first question is, are you interested in that? I mean, why are you here? Could I be blunt and ask sort of some of you why you are here? What is it that you would like to leave this meeting with? Anybody who is daring can say why you're here? Danes are supposed to be daring. So could I have one daring person who can say, okay.
Inspiration.
Inspiration, okay. Somebody else? Why are you here? When you're leaving this afternoon, what would you like to have achieved? Please.
Well, to win a prize, actually.
To win a prize. That's good. Now we're getting somewhere. Now, I believe that I mean, you could have different reasons for coming here. You could come here just to have some nice coffee, maybe some bubble at the end of the day, chat away, escape from work and so forth. Some of you are here because you want to win, because you want to sell more, because you want to be more successful in what you do. And I believe that sometimes when we talk about sustainability, we see that as something else, something different. And what I would like to talk more about is one aspect of sustainability, which is stakeholder engagement, which is how to engage with other people and how that can be helpful in terms of moving forward. So really, and one of my key messages today is very much linked to this, and that is climb out of the bunker where we as people prefer to stay, our organizational bunker, and meet with people, talk to them, and do fantastic things together. And very much when you talk about sustainability, that is about, I mean, you could look at it as a technical exercise, something where you should look at your environmental impact and so forth. But very much of sustainability is also understanding that you're part of a greater context. And being part of that greater context can make you much more successful. And it's so easy when we're in that bunker that we see the world in the way that we who reside in that little bunker sees it. Let me just do a little experiment with you. I mean, this is about perception. So, how many fingers do you see? A little bit louder, please. I'm supposed to be engaging. So, okay. How many fingers do you see? Well, there were sort of, most of you said 4. I did the first time I saw this too. And some of you were observant enough to say that you saw 5. But this is really, we see the world in the way we would like to see it. And that is one of our challenges. That is one of the things we need to address. So this is really what we're going to talk about today. Unfortunately, I have my notes on one computer and this. So climb out of the bunker. And I think when we, as organizations, we have a tendency to behave just like my 3 small kids do. We don't listen to people outside. And when we want something as an organization, we go to whoever we want something from and say, I want this. I want this subsidy from the government, or I want this partnership with you, or I want this, or I want that. But when we grow up as individuals, we learn that that is not the way we relate to others. We know that at least we have to pretend we are listening. And if we want a partnership, especially sort of a partnership with somebody special, that takes a little bit of time. And that is true when it comes to engaging with people outside of our organization as well. Now, and in my business, we sort of put terms to this, because then we could charge a much higher fee than if I just would say, okay, you need to talk to people, listen to them and do good things together. Nobody would pay consultants a high fee for that. But if you call it stakeholder engagement and you invent a lot of models, and we've done that, then you could charge much higher fee for it. But really, what this is about, and my key message today is that stakeholder engagement and sustainable partnerships can be a tool for you, for innovation, create new things, new products, new services that you otherwise would not have created. It can be a way of branding and marketing, creating stories that people like to talk about in social media and in old media, and spread the word about the fantastic things you can do here. It's also a way to what I call market access and sales. In some cases, you could actually tap into a specific context and get new possibilities. And we were actually, we were talking yesterday night, and Ruth, who's going to talk more later today, talked about the possibilities of having a lot of academic conferences when you have done a lot of great academic research. And suddenly, because you do a lot of academic research, you could create a new market, a new opportunity, and host a lot of academic conferences, which means tourists, which means more stays, more spending, and all the things we would like to see. And that is through a partnership with academia. And who would have thought that partnership with academia would generate sales in tourism? Risk reduction, that's an easy one, because by being a little bit clever about external expectations, this is a possibility to foresee some of the challenges, some of the problems, and do something about it. Quality and efficiency is also a no-brainer when it comes to sustainability and engagement. It's, simple things like all the way from energy efficiency and so forth. And simply pride, being more happy about what you do. Now, if we move on to understand, because I'm not going to, and I'm sorry to say this, I'm not going to provide you with 15 fantastic examples that you can go home and copy. So we're going to spend more time on this slightly philosophical perspective of engaging with other people. But hopefully, by the end of my session, you will have a few ideas on how to move forward. But when we talk about how to do these things, there are 3 core things, which again are more on the philosophical side. It's about listening, it's about taking in what has been said and creating possibilities to do things together. We'll get back to that. If we start off with a problem, with a challenge, the fact that we are in the bunker, one possibility to view this is to see big organizations. This is an analogy that I'm using, trying to illustrate the challenge. Imagine that big organizations like a huge hotel chain and other big organizations like that they are ships like this. Now, if you are in the management team of such a ship, then this is your worldview. You look at all your instruments and maneuvering from that perspective. If you are a region who would like to sort of attract a lot of activity, maybe this would be your worldview. This is actually the worldview from Göteborg. But if you have a different perspective, then maybe you look at the world like this, and then ships are obviously a possibility, but also a big challenge. If you are a small local community or an individual, your worldview when it comes to these big ships may be something like this. And these two views very often collide, and we often have difficulties in understanding each other. When a big organization is talking to non-profits, they don't understand each other. When public and private sector meets, very often that is also difficult to understand each other and each other's agendas. And this is why it's so important to find ways of relating to each other. And as I said, one of the terms that my trade use to talk about this is stakeholders and stakeholder engagement. And stakeholders, that's just, it's a technical term. How many of you have sort of used the term stakeholder and fairly familiar with it before? Hands up. Most of you. Fantastic. Now, you could use a lot of different definitions, but a simple one is those who are affected by what you do and those who can affect what you do. And stakeholder engagement is simply interacting with your stakeholders. Now, obviously, the one question is, who are our stakeholders? And this is just one example of a way of describing stakeholders and stakeholders that you may relate to. And this can be very different in different contexts. There is no set list. So for each organization, even for each project, there is a possibility to define your own list of stakeholders. And that could be done in many different ways. And you could also, when you move forward and decide to engage with your stakeholders, you need to be clear on why you're doing this. This is one way of this is the only pure consultancy slide I'll bore you with today. But this is one way of looking at it. And I think you need to be clear on that. Do you want to talk more, or do you want to listen? Do you want to develop internally and drive change within your organization, or are you more into developing relationships outside? And just be clear on what are your objectives when engaging with external stakeholders. And if you're into initiating partnerships and joint action, again, you don't have to rush things. That is something you can do. It'll take some time to do this. If we talk about listening, this is difficult. A few years ago, I ran a big dialogue for an energy company located not so far away from here, operating in Northern Europe. And they had realized that engaging with stakeholders was really critical from several different perspectives. It was important to understand the context they're operating in. It was also a possibility to do new things, because in the energy market, the competition is fierce and everybody's seeking new possibilities to be more successful than their competitor, invent new business models. Sounds almost like tourism, right? You want to do things differently. So they decided to invite a quite wide variety of stakeholders to a dialogue, a full day dialogue. the deputy CEO, 2 other people from the management team, a lot of other people from the company participated, and we had an awful lot of external participants invited to share their view on the company and how the company related. And then when the first critical voice was heard in that meeting, the deputy CEO raised his hand and said, well, sorry, I need to correct that. You got it all wrong. Let me explain. And that inability to listen and to really sort of embrace that somebody else may look at the world in a different way than you do. They may see that they may only see 4 fingers, or they see 5 and you only see 4. Was really a challenge, and it was about to sort of ruin the whole effort of the dialogue, which was to strengthen partnerships. And one of the lessons learned for me, I was very grateful because there were some other participants, very senior ones, who managed to sort of moderate and facilitate what happened in a better sense. And one of my lessons learned was that I need to train people who especially sort of the most senior ones, if they are to engage with people outside, because if you're the CEO or really high up in politics or something, you're so used to people bowing their head and saying, well, of course, sir, you're right, and I agree. And when people come in and say, I completely disagree, and for somebody not to react by instinct and correct and go into an aggressive mode, is not always that easy. So this is really the first message. If you want to engage truly with and strengthen possibilities for partnership, you need to ensure that the people from your organization doing this are very much interested in listening and moving forward with that. And the second is well, I don't know. Thank you. The second is really just to process this. There are many exercises where you meet with organizations, you develop splendid ideas, you listen to criticism or you listen to positive examples, and then nothing happens and you don't move forward. Or you don't process the information enough. You don't sort of use it in a way that you could do. Or you stick to the information yourself, whereas you could forward it to other people within your organization. If you are responsible for promotion of a region, and you sit there and you meet with people with a lot of great ideas, one of your jobs is obviously to connect with other people who may have more use of that idea. That could even be somebody outside of your region that could make more use of the information that you have just received. So this is just to say that you need to do this. And finally, on facilitating possibilities to actually engage, whatever you can do to move forward and make it possible for the people you talk to engage should be done. It's sometimes it's difficult to find the exact recipe in every situation, but going to action specific conditions, and you need to make sure that there are possibilities for people to take that engagement and move forward. And I'll share with you some examples. But if we go back then to this view, innovation, and talk about a few examples of what you could do. I will share first an example on innovation that I was involved in myself. I mean, I shouldn't take any credit for the actual outcome. I was merely facilitating some of the matchmaking in this sense, I should say. And that is this Volvo, coming from Sweden. The situation was similar. Volvo were being criticized by different organizations for different things. They received some harsh letters from the patients' organizations representing people suffering from asthma and allergy, claiming that sort of not only did the car pollute outside and making life more difficult for people suffering from respiratory diseases, respiratory conditions, but they also were not really good on an interior interior perspective, if you sit in the car, you don't get the fresh air that you would like to have. After a dialogue, a partnership was formed. And there were actually people from the Asthma and Allergy Association working together with people from Volvo, developing an interior compartment and special filters. That was the world's first car that was produced that could actually provide better air quality inside the car than outside. And the story is that if you've been in a shopping mall, for instance, and there are all these perfumes and so forth, and you feel your asthma reactions are coming, you should rush out to your car, close the doors, turn on the engine, and finally you can breathe fresh air. And this is now an add-on that you could buy to almost any Volvo. And this was the outcome of kind of unexpected partnership that initially came from criticism. So the question, of course, is what similar situations do you have? Do you have people criticizing what you do that you could actually form a partnership with and do things in a very different way? If you look at innovation in tourism, again, I'm just sort of a learner when it comes to the specific of tourism. I found this list or actually a colleague of mine who knows much more. She's from Valerie. I recruited her from Switzerland, sort of home of tourism, where she worked at Ernst & Young with a specific focus on tourism. These are 10 success factors for innovation in tourism. And when we looked at it and looked at some of the factors behind it, I won't go through the detailed lists, but it's really easy to say that if you talk about things like clustering resources, if you talk about networks, if you talk about not only development blocks, but identifying development blocks, critical mass, but also relationships to local government, social, political, and cultural capital. For me, all that translates into stakeholder engagement. Those are things that can actually help develop. Then, of course, it's difficult because sometimes, coming from Sweden, you look at the ice hotel and say, did it happen in that way, or was it just one guy with a clever idea that moved forward on it? But if you look closely at it, you could say, yeah, it was a clever idea, but it took a lot of collaboration to take it from the clever idea to something more. I won't bore you with all the details because I'm sure you've all heard it. And if we then talk about branding and marketing, market access and sales, I already shared an example of market access and sales and risk reduction. If we talk branding, marketing, and risk reduction, very much is about trust. And that is as true for your destinations as it is for companies. And this is a recent survey done by Edelman, who is a PR agency focusing very much on trust. And where they say, simply the message is that if you're trusted, people trust more in positive information about you than if you're, if you're distrusted, then people will not even believe in the positive information. So you really need to invest in being trusted. If you do repeated mistakes, if there are repeated situations where people feel that their expectations are not met, if there are situations where they feel that you have behaved in an irresponsible way, that will eventually put you in a position that even if you have positive information coming out, they won't believe in it. But if you do it the other way around, they will believe that if something wrong happens, that is probably not your fault. IKEA is a typical example of that. There was a situation a few years ago where you had two German managers of IKEA who were involved in a bribery scandal. So there were new stores being built in Germany, and they have apparently been bribed by some of the subcontractors to get the building contract. And in almost any case, if it would have been any other company, the headlines would have read, bribery in IKEA or corruption scandal in IKEA or something like that. Now the headline on at least 2 papers were IKEA hurt by bribery, IKEA suffering from bribery. Almost like this was not IKEA, but this was something that was sort of coming from outside. It didn't belong there. And the Business Week many years ago called IKEA a Teflon company. Whatever negative comes on just falls off. And I think if you're thinking about branding in general in this term, it's interesting because you have to invest constantly over time in that positive image, in you being somebody that can be trusted. And I think, I'm not the one to give the exact answers to why, but one of the things that happens in an IKEA store is if you want to return something, you don't get many questions. It's, yeah, you can do it. And that's part of building trust. Not questioning, allowing you to do it. That is a story. Most people can share it. I already opened the package, but it didn't fit and I went back and actually I could return it, as opposed to what happens in many other stores. And that is a way of investing in trust and in thereby investing in a situation where people will actually believe in the positive information. Okay, and this is just sort of a reminder of the importance of social media. Actually, we won't have time to go into the details of this. I would like to, we talked a lot about engaging with stakeholders. So I would like to do a little experiment with you instead of just me talking about engaging with stakeholders. Because really my message was we need to climb out of the bunker where we hide. We need to dare to listen to people outside, and they may sometimes see the world in a different way than we do, and based on that we can actually develop new ideas and we can create new partnerships. As a little example of that, I have then chosen the FIFA World Cup. So we are going to do a micro dialogue on the FIFA World Cup in 2014. It's a bit late, of course. Everybody involved in event planning know that 2 years from now there is not much we can change, but sort of we'll forget about that. This is Brazil. We're now in Brazil, and we have plenty of time. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to, in different groups, I will just shortly divide you, and ask you, as those different groups, think about your hopes and your fears when it comes to the FIFA World Cup. What are the things you fear the most, and what are the things you hope for the most when it comes to this? And then these different categories will have different roles, and you will have to discuss. Obviously you cannot discuss as a big group, but in small clusters as you said. So I'll start sort of by the... So here, the last 3 rows, you are the entrepreneurs, the small and medium-sized business in Brazil, in regions which are planned to host parts of the football game, okay? So this is, and your job is to think about things, possibilities, but also challenges for you when it comes to the World Cup, okay? And sometimes it's interesting to engage with a completely unexpected category. Sometimes you're too focused on people that you think about. So therefore we're going to blend in some artists. You could be musicians, painters, some writers. So what are your hopes and your fears when it comes to the World Cup? So that's your job. And finally, the 3 front rows, and you don't have to take this personally, but you are elderly. So I would like you to think about sort of, as an old person in Brazil, in the cities which will be affected by the World Cup? What are your greatest fears and your greatest hopes? Okay? So I will now give you 2 minutes. You can work in pairs or in triplets and discuss and come up with some fears and some hopes. Okay, please. Okay, everybody. So if we start with the entrepreneurs, do I have any hopes, any fears? I mean, you're more than welcome to present yourself.
Hi, I'm Mike from Knowledge Center of Coastal Tourism. Fears would be not to gain anything from the possibility of getting this event into our region. And hopes and possibilities would be to gain, obviously, from this event and make the people notice and show all the good sides.
Yeah. Very good. Some tangible fears or tangible hopes? Somebody would like to share something?
We're certainly hoping for Bristol to win.
Yes!
Because we are Brazilians.
Yes.
We're hoping for a new business, obviously. We're hoping to be seen. We're hoping to be able to create growth in our businesses. Yeah, we're hoping for the infrastructure to work and logistics to work out. We're fearing chaos.
Well, first of all, we hope we will have a great party, and we hope that we can make some businesses, and we hope that we get some economical finance into the artist world. And what did we fear?
For the entrepreneurs.
No money for the culture sector.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
All the money will be
After the party's over. Okay. Some tangible, some idea that came up as part of a hope, something that could be done, some creative thought in that sense. Okay. And finally, the old people. Oops, sorry. Do we have any who dare to represent the old? Now, anybody who would like to share sort of thoughts on being the old people? Please present yourself.
My English is not so good, but I'll try. We are two older women, and we will make shop in the stadium, and we will have the exclusive clothes for women on smykker og alt sådan noget, because all this man is taken from home and has a little sad samvittighed. So they must buy something for the woman and for the child at home. So we will take the money and have a good thing.
That's clever. Yeah. Very good. Now, this was just a micro exercise. One of the things that strikes me when you do this are two things. One is, when you do this, before you do it, the organization organizing it, especially if it's a big company, is always very nervous. And they feel that people will come with demands, with criticism, and that they will be sort of hostile. and in a way that is sometimes you really need to spend a lot of time and energy convincing them that well, actually people may not have as their first priority to stab you in your back. They may see this as an opportunity. But that is the first thing. So you need to convince people that talking to people outside of your organization and actually opening up, not only have a strict agenda and sit on opposing sides of the table, but opening up and say, we're going to do this. Do you have any ideas? Do you want to share? The second reflection is that very often stakeholders coming to such a meeting are very well prepared and have a lot of ideas and are very constructive. I was running a dialogue for AstraZeneca, the pharmaceutical company, and there was this one guy working with in the public sector, one of the procurers of drugs, and he had been very sort of active on working for organic drugs and being really sort of criticizing a lot of the things being done by the pharmaceutical industry, and people had sort of prep meetings within the company. I could say this because now it's a number of years ago. Prep meetings, how to deal with all the possible criticism that he might raise. And then he came to the meeting, and he started off, because we started off with an initial round where people can contribute with their ideas, and he started off by saying, well, if I was part of the management team of AstraZeneca, I would think about a branding strategy containing the following elements. And the AZ representatives were taken aback because he was really sort of contributing, wanting to them to be more successful. And I think this is something that really is also part of my message today, that if you engage with other people, they are very often very interested in making you more successful. Now we're getting to sort of the rounding up before some possibility for further discussion, but I would like you to do one more thing, not for me, but for yourself before I close, and that is, if you have pen and paper, most of you do, if you could list actually I think I do have a slide on that. 3 stakeholders that your organization is not yet engaging with, but that you could engage with. And of these 3, at least one should be a little bit out of the ordinary, just like the artists in the FIFA example. Okay? So if you could take just 1 minute, pen and paper, list 3 stakeholders that your organization has not yet engaged with, and at least one, or all 3, could be a little bit out of the ordinary. Okay, so please, 1 minute. Okay, can I then ask you, how many of you have written at least one? Hand up, please. At least one. Yeah, 1, 2, or 3, yeah. Okay, hands up, please. Thank you. This was my key performance indicator for today, to see that you would actually get something out of this today. My message for you today has been, climb out of your organizational bunker, meet with people, talk to them, listen to them, do fantastic things together. And I would like to end with a quote that Erik, and then I missed the surname again. Sørensen. And we talked about yesterday, and I was reminded of the quote by Thomas Tranströmer, the Swedish Nobel laureate, who said, because sometimes when you feel that you're doing something a little bit out of the ordinary, you should dare to do that, because as he says in this fantastic poem, somewhere in the forest there is an opening. Glänta. What is that in Danish? Lysning. Somewhere in the forest there is an opening, a lysning, that can only be found by the one who gets lost. Thank you very much.